right, time for another edition of Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard. I'm Lance Hill for the next round. It is on Disrupt Media. Like, subscribe, give us that thumbs up. We would appreciate that. It is brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use that code next round. Get that first deposit on the house. Mybookie.ag. They've already got Super Bowl 58 props up. We'll get to Super Bowl 58 with the 49ers and the Chiefs in a minute. But as I bring in Brock, 29 years ago, what were you doing?
29 years ago. Ooh,
let me give you a little hint.
Yeah.
I'm going to take you back to February of 1995.
February
It was
of 1995.
the first Wednesday of February. 1995.
Yeah, Viking Power will survive through the class of 95. Viking Power will survive through the class of 95. And on that day, we used the fax machine. I sent the fax in. I had the Puyallup Herald at the house. Was wearing some ugly, stinking freaking sweater, looking horrible, looking back at those pictures. But one proud day, Letterman jacket on, signing my letter of intent to be a Washington Husky.
Yeah. You obviously grew up with that in your blood. Your big brother, your dad had a pipeline as a high school coach.
Hobart, yes.
Yeah. I mean, was there any chance you were going anywhere else?
Yeah. A real chance. In fact, when I came back from my recruiting trip to the place that you love as much as anywhere in the world, I came back with a UCLA hat, told some of my buddies, yeah, I think I'm going to be a Bruin, man. Yeah. Damon was USC. USC was Damon's second. I think John Robinson was there. Mike Riley recruited Damon. He was a QB coach. For me, I love Terry Donahue. Rest in peace, man. He was even with my Husky coaches. You know, I favored Terry a little bit more than I did Jim Lambright. Bob Toledo was the coordinator. They did home visits. I went down there. I loved it. It was UCLA or Washington. And in the end, there were two factors. In the end, Damon and my dad said, hey, listen, do whatever you want to do. Like, you want to go to UCLA? UW isn't perfect. Going to be on sanctions. Going to be some hard times that may come. But just realize that if you go down there, you'll never be, like moving back to Washington if this is where you want to live. And like, oh, man, he was a Husky. Oh, look at all the roots. You're just not going to develop any roots. And, man, that was pretty sound counsel back in 1995 because fast forward almost 30 years later, and those roots that I made as a high school player, as a college player, as a pro player has afforded me to do what I'm doing, right? To have a radio show for 15 years and connections and everything that I have back there. So, no, it was real close. And I love Terry. He was by far my favorite. And unfortunately, we lost him a few years ago. Funny story, on the way to our house for my home visit on I-5, they got in a wreck. Bob Toledo hit the median and ran into the wall on I-5. Yeah. Like he had a big neck brace on. Were y'all
serving on passing time at dinner?
No, this was like in the afternoon. I'm like, this is not a good sign, not a good sign. And then the other thing, just the players. I did not feel the camaraderie, the friendship. LA, it just felt kind of scattered, and strength coach was kind of a turkey. So there were a few other factors, but man, it was close. It was UCLA or Washington for me.
I know you're a man of faith and like you believe truly where you are is where you were meant to be, and you've got a great family. And look, you live a great life. I mean, you're doing some really cool stuff. A lot of people would love to do, but coming out of high school and look, and you played in the league. I mean, you started a lot of games at Washington.
Yeah.
Were you projected as one of these guys? This is going to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL for a long time.
Yeah, going into my last year. So funny about UCLA and Washington. I think to this day, honestly, I think Cade McNown is still a little bit bitter that I got to make the choice and he didn't. He was in Wesleyan, Oregon. I was up there in Puyallup, and really came down to UCLA and Washington for him and I. And had I chose UCLA, he'd have gone to Washington. I chose Washington. He ended up going to UCLA. And, I met my wife. She's a basketball player at Washington. You think about, as you said, kind of a man of faith, like all of these things and where I am now. Had I gone to school down there, I do think every once in a while, though, man, that'd have been pretty fun. They had some pretty good players. Danny Farmer's a pretty good player. Jonathan Ogden was a pretty good player. Had a couple backs that played in the NFL. I did too. Like early on at Washington, I had some great players. My God, my 97 team and even my 96 team with Corey Dillon, like it was fun. It just, unfortunately, at the end of it in 98, all of them left for the pros, Benji Olsen and Olin Kreutz and Rashawn Sheehy and Jerome Pathon. And I had a lot of freshmen. We had a lot less guys on scholarship because of sanctions. But I went into that year, Lance, I went into my 1998, if you were, look back like in August of 98. And I'd come back to school I flirted with leaving in that spring and being behind Peyton and Eli, and most of the scouts and agents had said, hey, listen, you're going to be the third guy drafted. I don't know if that's going to be the first round, second round, where that's going to be, but it'll be Peyton and Ryan. I said, well, I'm going to go back to school then, and we're going to run the spread, and we're going to get in the shotgun, and the ball's going to be in my hands, going to get to do all this fun stuff. And honestly, that August, I remember for media day, Husky Media Day, like, hey, the Cleveland Plain Dealer wants to talk to you. Some of these other I'm like, why would the Cleveland Plain Dealer want to talk to me? And my SID is like, well, the Browns franchise, they're going to have the number 1 pick, and they're talking to you and Tim Couch and Akili Smith and Cade McNown. And that was a pretty Dante Culpepper, Sean King. That's a pretty deep, that class probably in some ways similar to the one we're going to have in April. I mean, a lot of different flavors, a lot of different backgrounds. Ultimately, I went in the 3rd round that year. But yeah, going into that season, Heisman conversation, there was a lot going in, and that year was certainly my toughest year in college.
And I thought Tim Couch ultimately going number 1 to Cleveland was going to be a complete stud. And he had a moment where it looked like, he had a little momentum, and, he was going to be in the league a while, and it just obviously didn't work out. Now, a lot of that does, it's dictated by where you go, and Cleveland at that point was not a good organization.
No, Donovan McNabb was in that class. I will say, going to the combine, because that's the next thing up in the NFL, I had to try to kind of rebuild myself, and fundamentally I fell apart. I got hit a lot. I got hurt. It just was not a great year for me. And I remember Marvin Demoff, my agent, saying, just make sure you really step into those throws. I worked with some guys ahead of time, but it was really clear out of that class. So that was Couch 1. That was McNabb 2, getting booed. I believe the next one was Akili, and then Cade, and then Culpepper. So those 5 in the first 10. And I could have told you at that combine, Lance, that I'd been a little analyst back then. I would have said, oh, McNabb's going to be the best, because he just owned it. Like immediately, he was a guy that everybody gravitated around. He was magnetic. He just had tremendous leadership. He was vocal. Delivery was a little funky, not the most accurate guy, but a great athlete. And the dudes just loved him. And sure enough, Dante had a great career before he got hurt. But Don McNabb was different. You could feel that even that April back in 1999.
It's Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard right here on Disrupt the Media. Like, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Brought to you by Lance's Lock. Free play every single day. Lance'sLock.com. Super Bowl 58 coming up. We've got side total props. We'll get to that in 1 second. You mentioned Washington, and the program was at its best this year under Kalen DeBoer. They played for a national championship just weeks ago. Kalen DeBoer has since kind of relocated to our neck of the woods, Alabama's next head coach. And Ryan Grubb, I'll never forget, you were the first to come on to talk about Kalen DeBoer on the next round with us. And you said the good news is he's bringing the gang with him. Yeah. And the gang really was led by Ryan Grubb. And then there were discussions last week that Mike McDonald, who takes the Seahawks job, is looking for an offensive coordinator. Mike Kafka seemed to be that guy. That interview was blocked, and now it's kind of open. It's kind of open, and a lot of people think Ryan Grubb, being, in Seattle the last couple of years, Seattle liking his offensive style, this would be a fit. If Ryan Grubb, first of all, how realistic is it Mike McDonald ends up hiring Ryan Grubb? And if Ryan Grubb was to leave this staff, how big of a blow for Alabama?
I think it's very realistic. You heard the name Chip Kelly. He interviewed last night with those Seahawks as well. There have been a bunch of guys. So the names that have gone public are Kafka, or they interviewed him twice for the head job. Ultimately, as you said, the Giants blocked it. The passing game coordinator for the Lions, Ryan Grubb, Chip Kelly, but there are more names. I can confirm that. They have talked to more people since Ryan Grubb last week. That would be a significant loss. When I said that to you guys that next day, I made it pretty darn clear that you're not just getting Kalen DeBoer. And if you're going to fill Nick Saban's shoes, they may not be big, literally, what are they? 9, size 10. I mean,
he's probably size 9.5.
Yeah, I mean, they're not real big feet, but they're the biggest shoes ever in the history of college football. He's the best to ever do it. So you're not going to do it with one guy. You better bring a whole team in so they can hit the ground running, much like you did at Fresno, much like you did at Washington, much like you did because they had so much time on task as a staff together. And Grubb's a big part of it, man. He leaned on him. He's his play caller. Kalen could call plays. He's done that before. If he were to lose Grubb, would he think about doing some of that? Could he elevate Nick Sheridan? possibly he called plays at Indiana and has been with Kalen the last couple of years at Washington as their tight ends coach. So there's a possibility, but no, Lance, I think that would be a significant blow. I think the challenge he's facing, a little bit of the challenge that Chip Kelly would face is, okay, the lines between college and pro ball are being blurred more than ever. Right? Coaches are leaving. Power 5 head coach Hafley leaves Boston College to go be a coordinator in the league.
Yeah, well, I was about to bring that up with you saying that Chip Kelly interviewed. I mean, he's got, UCLA, which you were just talking about in your recruiting visits. I mean, to leave UCLA going to the Big Ten to be an offense coordinator in the NFL, I mean, I guess it shows you where we are right now.
It does. It does, because they want a level playing field. At UCLA, it's not going to be a level playing field as he's going to move into the Big Ten. He doesn't like recruiting. He hates it. Doesn't like kissing the butts of these recruits and these money managers and these coaches, all that you got to do. I mean, that's just not what he wants to do. I think he and others want to get, I think, Ryan Day at Ohio State, if the right opportunity came eventually. If he can go out a national champion and, a door opens, he would love to get back in the NFL as well. So they would love that, because it's 32 on a level playing field, all by playing by the same rule, the same salary cap, same draft, all of it. Whereas college football is a total free-for-all right now. The challenge for Grubb, if you look at him through the years, Lance, is it's been a heavy pass. And I think Mike McDonald, a D coordinator, says, okay, I love the production. I love the efficiency. I love what you've done everywhere you've been. Your QB's been awesome. But do you know the line of scrimmage? And do you know the game at this level? I remember a very prodigious high school coach in Washington State went to the UW as a running back coach. And he had to learn real quick, like, well, hold on a second. We did this in high school. I mean, we ran this play and look at the number, and it's like, yeah, that doesn't work the same. It may look good on the whiteboard, but you're not blowing that guy 6 yards off the ball. Like, this is college. And then you go from college to pro, and, you're not blowing anybody a foot off the ball. You're hoping to move them 6 inches, right, in that direction. So I think those are some of the things that the Hawks and Mike McDonald are considering is, okay, can this guy transition at the line of scrimmage run game to what you need to do at the NFL level? But he's being strongly considered. They're turning over every rock, and it would be a blow, absolutely a blow to Alabama.
It's Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard. It's brought to you by MyBookie. Use that code NEXTROUND. Get that first deposit on the house, mybookie.ag. All the props are up for Super Bowl 58. Speaking of Super Bowl 58, I'm a little surprised you're not sitting on Radio Row in Las Vegas. The older I get, like 15 years ago, I would have done anything I could to be in that madness, that mix in Las Vegas. No desire. But you guys have been there before, being a legitimate NFL market that you cover.
Yeah, our station makes a decision financially that, hey, if the Seahawks are there, we are there. So we were in New York, and that will never be beat. I mean, I don't care if it's Vegas. I don't care where it is. That year in New York was unbelievable. I mean, it really was. So the game was obviously in New Jersey, but Radio Row was right there, man. It was right in New York City, in Manhattan. It was off the charts. I mean, off the charts fun. The next year we go to Phoenix, and it was terrible in some convention center. It was raining all week in Phoenix. It was awful. You're removed from everything. So Vegas would be cool. And I'm looking at it. I was jumping on some shows on Radio Row this morning, and I could see that, yep, it's going to be fun. The next few days, really fun. If the Hawks could get there, and when they do get there, I hope it's somewhere like that. New Orleans is fun. But I'm telling you, Lance, it's going to be really hard in my lifetime to beat New York City.
So at mybookie.ag right now, San Francisco is a 2.5-point favorite. The underdog has won 15 of the last, or they've actually covered 15 of the last 22. Okay. They've won 3 straight. This Kansas City team is obviously playing their best football. San Francisco seems a little uneven.
Yep.
I would put it maybe that way as they roll into Super Bowl 58 with that week off. You never can tell what's going to happen. We know, and we've talked about this since day one, San Francisco's got the best roster in the NFL, top to bottom, outside of Pat Mahomes. Like, I think everyone would take Pat Mahomes number one if you're drafting.
Yep.
But then it might be a run of like 6 or 7 Niners, right?
Yep. Chris Jones would probably slide in there.
Yeah.
I look at it this way. Like, if you took the 22 starters, I think I've told you this before, but that's one of the last things I do in our production meeting before our games the night before, is I say, okay, 22 starters. We're on the playground. Here we go. I'm picking Lance. I'm picking Brownie. Dunaway is going to be my last pick, but I'm going to go in that order. So if I'm going to take the 22 starters and you just go through the roster and through the depth, you're taking at least 15 49ers. I mean, you're taking their tight end. Well, That's a toss up. That's a
Yeah,
wash.
I mean, I think Kittle was definitely better in the regular season.
You're taking Debo, you're taking Ayuk, you're taking McCaffrey, you're taking Trent Williams. Kansas City's interior line is a strength. You know, you're probably taking 2 or 3 of those guys on the D line. We'll see if Armstead can go, but you're taking Hargrave, you're taking Bosa, probably taking Chase Young. Chris Jones is the one. You're taking both linebackers from San Francisco. The back end, you're taking a couple Chiefs. So I think it's about 15-7. But as you said, the number one is a pretty big number one. And that number 1-5 in Mahomes has just been a difference, man. He's erasing the ills and some of the deficiencies of his tackles. Andy Reid's phenomenal. They got it cooking. I feel this way, Lance. I don't know about you, but if D'Amico Ryan were the D coordinator of the Niners, I'd take the Niners. I see a crew that looks to me a little bit like the Seahawks defensively, Steve Wilkes and Pete Carroll, and just kind of that, keep it in front of you. Keep it in front of you. Rope-a-dope. You know, don't give up the big play. And I hate that mindset.
Yeah, almost a step slow or a step out of place on every play. And look, they made some adjustments. I'll give them credit in the second half against Detroit, but it doesn't look like the same smothering. I mean, I would say the better overall unit is Kansas City, right? I mean, just the way they're playing right now.
Just the way they're playing. Yep. And, you know, if they had Tyreek, if this was the Chiefs team from a couple years ago in this matchup that, you know, went against the Niners, I think I'm taking, you know, that Chiefs team comfortably or by a field goal. But this one, golly, I would hope that Wilkes, and I would hope that Shanahan, I would hope he would say, hey, listen, let's not go into this thing against Mahomes and just play it safe. You're not going to play it safe against Mahomes. I mean, he and Kelsey, you play it safe against them, that ball is going to be moving up and down the 20, and there's going to be points. And no, let's get after him, man. Let's cut it loose. Let's do a little bit of what Tampa did when they beat them in that Super Bowl. And yes, they could rush 4 and maybe do that better than San Francisco right now is rushing with their 4. But to me, that'll be the key, man. If they hit, they harass, they impact Mahomes like the Buccaneers did with their 4-man rush, the Niners are going to win this thing.
You know, Mahomes is one of these guys who are already talking about he's going to surpass Tom Brady. We'll see what happens. You know, the most amazing thing about Tom Brady winning 3 and 4 was taking 9 years in between Super Bowl wins. Yeah. So we'll see if Pat Mahomes is still that driven. You know, at 28 right now, he is. With all that said, more than likely he would be, you know, already on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks, and he's going against Mr. Irrelevant in Brock Purdy. But Brock Purdy in 5 career playoff starts, 1 interception. And if he can play clean football, you know, I think the path to victory for Kansas City is forcing him into mistakes.
Yes. Yeah. I think Detroit would say, golly, I'd really like to have that one right off our hands that fell into Ayuk's hands. That should have been interception number 2. And then we're talking about the Lions probably more than likely being in this sucker. So, yeah, you know, Purdy, we've got to get rid of the term game manager. It has so many negative connotations, and maybe you and I can start this right here on Unlocked. We started today, and we feel it build, and in the years to come with your platform.
I don't know what you're going to say, but I'm all in. I'm going to roll with it.
He's a game facilitator.
He's a game facilitator. Well, they're a point guard, right? I mean,
it's a point guard, man. You facilitate. You know, you facilitate. You make everybody around you better. He actually, you know, he kind of reminds me. I was thinking about old NBA point guards, and this guy I don't think ever won a championship either. So Purdy's going to get a chance to do it, but he just kind of reminds me of Mark Price. Remember Mark Price, Cleveland for those years? Yeah. Cleveland, you know, you had Sampson, you had Nance, you had some dudes around him. Dude could flat out just everything, you know, that he was asked. He could shoot free throws. If Brock Purdy were a point guard, you know, he's shooting 92% from the line. I mean, he's going to do that and do that really, really well. And then, you know, be a little undersized. He won't be quite as athletic, but sneaky athletic. And this dude's a point guard. He's a facilitator. That's his job to do, not game manager. Game manager is negative. It's like in the manger, you know, it's just like this homeschool kid that just can't do it. No, this dude can do it. And he's done it in big moments on big stages, and none will be bigger Sunday night for sure.
I want to bring up one prop because I love Christian McCaffrey. I mean, I think non-quarterback, you can make an argument, most important player in the NFL. His prop for Super Bowl 58, most shops right now, mybookie.ag, 90.5 rushing yards.
90?
The Chiefs, 90.5. The Chiefs have not given up a 90-yard rusher in 15 consecutive games.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting number because, you know, Vegas does their homework on these props.
Yep.
So I don't know. It kind of
I'm taking the under on that one.
You're taking the under?
I think I would take the under on that one because hard play, big plays, explosive plays. You know, Spagnuolo does a pretty good job with that, and his secondary tackles well, and Tranquil tackles well, and Sneed tackles well. And in order to get that, I'd imagine you'd have to have a 30 or a 40 or 50 yarder, right? One of those just gashes. And they're capable. I mean, he's had a bunch of those, but I think it's going to be maybe 70 rushing, 70 receiving. Get him out of the backfield, get him on those checkdowns, get him involved kind of in that phase of it. I heard a great story here. I make home in Denver, and Ed McCaffrey, right? Big deal. And obviously Christian goes to the same high school my kids have gone to. And
Luke's getting a lot of love right now coming out of Rice.
He is.
It's the guy that I will tell you this. I'd take a shot on the kid just based on lineage.
The genetics, not bad. Yeah. And he was telling a story. I think Christian told this story on to the local radio guys that kind of caught buzz. And he said, my senior year, I got cramps. Maybe it was even his junior year in a game. Both my calves cramped, and my dad. This just tells you the psychosis of Ed McCaffrey. Then every game in high school, his senior year, he took him out of Valor and got IVs, so he would never cramp again. He was upset with the dress code that they had to wear blue jeans. He felt like on game day, you could wear sweats. I don't want you to be constricted in any way, just maniacal in every last detail. And not only is God gifted him with great genetics, and if you see him in person, Lance, the dude is just a freaking rock of muscle. He's got that combined with just a maniacal attention to detail, and phenomenal dude. But 90 and a half feels, golly, that's a tough number for me to bet over. You?
I mean, just because it's such a massive number, I'm like, they're trying to tell us something, but 15 consecutive games, and I just think the Chiefs defense gets better and better. It's probably a prop I will avoid, but before you get out of here, 9:15 Central Time Sunday night, round about that time, somebody's going to have the Lombardi Trophy. Will it be Kansas City for the third time with Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid, or will it be the San Francisco 49ers for the first time in 30 years?
I think the third time is going to be the charm for Kyle. I think the third time is going to be the charm because just, and maybe this is my own bias with the Seahawks in 2014 and just knowing the difference in a complete, full, healthy roster versus one that's missing a few pieces. And Kansas City's been missing a few pieces at receiver all season long. Rice has come on, and he's been tremendous, and he's no longer a rookie anymore at this stage, but he's still incredibly young. Their tackles, just read today, the right tackle, Jawan Taylor, had lost his mom a couple days ago. He's going to dedicate this game to her. He's struggled anyway this season, and Bosa's going to be in a wide nine technique and in his grill all game long. Omenahu is a big loss. He is that extra. He's like the Cliff Averill to the Seahawks, and you tear that ACL and you could survive a game, but in this kind of matchup, I always like the healthier teams, man. You get to this stage, that war of attrition is so big. Who's got their horses? Who's got everybody going? Kansas City got most of them. San Francisco feels like they got all of them. And I think the third time for Kyle is going to be the charm Sunday night.
It is Unlocked with Fox's Brock Huard. Enjoy Super Bowl 58. We will catch up, kind of recap everything next week.
Can't wait, man. These are always a blast. And who you got, by the way? Have you told the people yet?
Well, I haven't let it out there. Lance'sLock.com. We will probably have a free play on Super Bowl Sunday on one of the props.
Okay.
We'll have multiple props. We'll have side and total. I know. I'll text you.
Please
but
do.
For the record, I am god awful when it comes to Super Bowls.
Oh, are you really?
Oh my gosh.
You've been good this year, man. I look back at a lot of our texts over the course of the year, different games. You've been good this year.
It's been a shakier year for me.
Really?
We're about to completely blow it out right here. We're about to. This Super Bowl is going to be the best Super Bowl in the history of Lance'sLock.com. You're right here.
I feel it.
I am going to be a game facilitator for everyone.